Hello friends, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. This is Ginny from Polly's Paper Studio. I've got a mini album tutorial to share with you today. I'm using the Nature Sketchbook collection from Graphic 45 and one surprise supply to create the base of this book. So if you are like me and doing a deep dive into your stash, you might find alternate ways to use some of your basics. Before I get started, I did want to say thank you to all of my lovely friends who left me a comment. I asked about how you're keeping busy and what your weather is where you are quarantining, and I was so shocked to hear that some of y'all are actually experiencing some of the colder weather like we are. I just kind of figured everyone else had summer but me. I don't know if I was just feeling bad for myself or not, but I'm sorry for those of y'all who are getting snow like we are still, and a little bit jealous of those who are having nice weather in the 80s. So before I go any further with the jibber jabbering, let's get into this project. So from the depths of my stash, I found my Graphic 45 Nature Sketchbook collection, and I have been into this a fair few times. All of the pieces are starting to look a little bit chopped up, but I really actually love this collection, and I think that it works perfectly for a tag album because it is nature inspired. So another item from the stash is going to be this calendar, also from Graphic 45, and it's meant to have a stand, and then you would decorate each page and flip through each month. But I never used it for its intended purpose, but I do think that I can get some use out of this for these pages. So they are very, very thick craft paper, so I think that will add a lot of bulk and sturdiness to my book. So I just pulled out a couple of pages here and I created the base for my book. So basically what I've got are 4 pieces cut to be 4.5 by 10 3/4, and then I scored it at 5.5. So there are 4 of those. Once it's folded, I came in with my ruler and measured in 1/4 inch and then 1.5 inches from either side. Now this doesn't matter that it's perfect, it just matters that they all match. So I used my template as a guide, and I just held up all of my pieces and punched them out so that they would all be the same. Now the difference in the length is to allow for there to be an ease in this pocket so that you can put your tags in easily. If you had them all at the same length, it would be difficult to get that tag in there, but you see how easy that is just to slide that in. Because of that, you will be getting 2 different size pages. So I did measure these out ahead of time because I am not good at remembering numbers. So I wrote them down here on some scrap paper. Here are 2 page sizes. So you'll see when you open your book, you're going to have a larger page on one side, and then the side that has the pocket is going to be slightly smaller. So you want to make sure you leave room for those holes to be punched where your rings will go through. So for the large page, my mat is going to be 4 3/8 by 4 7/8, and then my pattern paper is going to be 4 1/4 by 4 3/4. Then for my smaller page, the height doesn't change, so the mat is still 4 3/8, but now the length is 4 5/8. And then for the pattern paper on top, it's 4 1/4 and then 4 1/2. That way you'll get a nice even border all the way around. So if you want to copy those numbers down, you can make this book as it is. But if you want to leave a little bit of extra room in the pocket for additional things to be tucked in, you probably want to consider making it a little bit taller so that you'll get a little bit of extra roominess inside and you can put additional items in your pocket. So the nice thing about this is that all the pages are going to be the same from front to back. So you're going to have one small and one large page, and there will be 3 sets of 2 inside pages for your book, and then a front and back cover. So you'll have 4 sets of those pages, and you'll be able to cover the whole book. So what I did was I went ahead and I made that out of that craft paper from the calendar and scored it and punched it. You see how very nice and thick this is? So this will be very sturdy, and actually it's quite heavy. And then you want to attach your sides using a good wet adhesive like Tombow. I went ahead and did all of my pages, and then I sat them with a book on top because I am very prone to wanting to pick at things that are still wet or put my finger in wet paint. So I had to like put it in and then weight it down and then walk away from it so that it would have time to set up. But because this is good and porous, that glue works great. One thing I will mention is that you want to put your glue on the shorter side so that when you flip it over, you're not going to have excess glue like I did for my first page. And then I thought, well, that was silly. I should do it the other way. So put your glue on your short side. Get it as close to the edge as you can, and don't glob so much on that it comes out the sides. Just make sure that you've got enough to keep that secure. And so that is my book, and we can begin to cover the pages. So I'll start with the first set of 2, and that will be easier because the layers for the cover do get a bit bulky and it's hard to work with them that way. So like I said, you're going to have a large and small page. Your large is going to be on the left and your small will be on the right. So here's that collection nature sketchbook. I've used the black matting just because I think it looks really pretty with the collection, but if you're using a different collection, you just want to make sure and coordinate with that pattern paper, and then you could easily substitute the craft paper for a thicker cardstock. I would go with like 110 pound just so that it would be very sturdy. So there is my longer page. Here is my shorter page, and I'm just keeping that same nice border all the way around. I'll go ahead and do all the bases first, and then I'll come back in and we can do the embellishing. So for this side, I'm going with these beautiful bees. Now, like I mentioned, I've used this collection a fair bit, so some of my pieces are getting a little bit smaller, but because this is a smaller book, I was definitely able to get full-size sheets for my base layers, and that makes it easier to get everything stuck down evenly and nice. So here is the same thing on this side, and you see I'm just pulling those pages closer to me so that I can get them lined up more easily. This is one of my favorite collections from Graphic 45. I know I say that about every collection I'm working with, but this has stood over time as one of my favorites because it's just so nature inspired. So here is the last set of pages, and you can see why I'm just working along so that I don't get them mixed up. It would be very easy to have your patterns running in the wrong direction or get them upside down. This one is going to run sideways, but I've got a bit of embellishing to do on top, so it won't be as noticeable. That was just one of the situations I ran into because I did want to use that pattern and I did not have enough to cut it running in the other direction. So here is my second smaller page, and I've added a pocket. You'll see that I'm using the trim from cutting the tags. So this was a good use of offcuts. And then the collection also has these beautiful kind of nature book inspired tags. So that's a good place to tuck one of those in. You can definitely add some additional pictures or mementos that are flat to this pocket so that you can really fill this book in very nicely. I'm going to add this going in the middle because I have a border to add so that I can get some embellishing done on this book without adding a tremendous amount of bulk. Okay, there are my center pages all set, and might as well add my back cover while I'm at it. This one turned out to be a non-directional pattern, so it works out pretty well that I had to cut the pages in different directions to get the full width of the paper for the page, but you can't tell because the pattern is non-directional. So that will be the back of the book, and we can begin to add our embellishing. So the thing that you want to consider is not adding too much bulk because the rings do fill up pretty quickly. I'm going to use just a 1-inch ring, so you can't add too many spacers if you want to leave room for pictures and journaling. Now I've got another one of those pretty little garden tags, and the script on it over the fruit is so pretty. I'm going to just kind of layer that in and top it with a crisp white doily. So this helps to break up the busy paper patterns. And we're creating a bit of a photo mat here with that second layer of pattern paper on top. Then I'm just going to add this die cut banner shape. This was another offcut from cutting the tags out, so I'm just not wasting any little bit of it. Now what I've done is only put adhesive on the outside so that when I put a picture in, it can just tuck in underneath that banner, and it'll be a very nice layered look. So here is my first set of pages all set. I'm leaving this one just unlayered so that a bigger picture can be added. For this page, I've carefully clipped out one of the border strips, and I've got two different sizes, like I said, because the pages are different, and I'm going to just use my first side here as a border across the bottom. Then I've cut a very pretty square type doily with a scalloped edge. This will be another photo mat, and it does take up quite a bit of that page, and this will be nice for bigger pictures. I'm putting that on just with double-sided adhesive. That's all going to be flat. And then here is another piece of that pattern paper. So I have alternated the darker, busier background with the lighter pattern that's a little bit larger. That way it won't look busy, and also helps to add a cardstock border so that it definitely appears to be another whole layer. So here's that other border strip, and for this one I have only added adhesive to the outside, same as that banner on the other page. I want to be able to tuck a picture in underneath of it so that when it's all filled in, it looks nice and layered. So you can see that you can get things underneath of that. Here's just a tiny little bit of extra orange for the top, and these are the pieces that I clipped off that banner to make it fit. And it helps to bring the orange from that border strip up to the top. I put it on my favorite scrapbook adhesive spacer, so they're not quite as thick. I don't want to add bulk here so that it won't stay in the rings properly. So that is my second set of pages done. For the last set, I've got two more of the border strips. So this time I cut them the same length. I'm going to run them vertically here as an accent for the outside of the page. And I'm just running that all the way up to where the pattern paper meets the cardstock. And I'm going to put this one on as well. So they're bordering the outside of the pages. This will not interfere with getting things in and out of that pocket. It will still function very well. That way you can tuck in all your mementos here. I've got another of those pretty doilies. It's one of my favorites because of the size, and it has a lot of detail, but it isn't so intricate that it has a difficult time coming out of the die. I'm going to top that doily with this smaller circle, so this is more of the offcut, and it kind of helps to create a frame for a picture. I fussy cut one of the butterflies from the page, and I took my black marker and went around the outside once it was cut so that it didn't leave a white edge. And I put some adhesive only on the bottom again so that a picture can be added underneath for layering purposes. So here is the inside all set. Now you can see that we're adding quite a bit of bulk as we go along. I'll go ahead and finish the front and then we can add the tags. So I'm using the same pattern on the cover as I did on the back, and this is going to be the shorter side, so I don't have quite as much room to add my layering, but I think that I figured out a good arrangement so that I can get all the details that I want. Okay, here is that base layer, and I'm adding another one of those doilies. This is a great way to use up offcuts of your white paper as well if you're making card bases. So here is one of those pretty cut apart floral tags with the script on it, and I'm going just a little bit to the right here. I know I have a lot of things to add, so unfortunately a fair bit of that doily is going to get covered, but it will all be worth it in the end. Here's a portion of that banner. Remember on the other pages I had clipped off a couple of the pieces. I just need it to fill this space right here, and I'm going to add it with just double-sided adhesive. I put this on foam, and this is going to just be flat against that because I need room for my butterfly. So this is a Franken butterfly created with 2 half portions that I glued together in the middle, and then I pop that up on a foam spacer as well so that I can build more dimension. And it's just sort of going to be offset a little. I think those green and blue butterflies look really pretty on that fern background. I think those are fern. If I'm wrong, you can let me know in the comments. Okay, here's my sentiment. This is from Tim Holtz, the chipboard ones, and I have put a foam spacer on one side and just the flat adhesive on the other, because remember we put this butterfly up on a spacer, so we've got to accommodate that bulk. And I do want to keep this flat to the top so that it will sit perfectly, and I think that is a very nice sentiment to go on this. So here are my flowers, and as I do, I created them off project. Larger flower in the middle that goes with that banner, and then some black velvety hydrangeas, some die cut leaves and loopy twine bows, and then I put an extra layer of foliage in here, kind of a rose gold sort of glitter paper, and it's just kind of a delicate foliage to fill in that space. And you see how it's just going to tuck in there and curve right around the bottom of that butterfly. So I was surprised at how large of an arrangement I was able to get on this smaller book page, but because it has a little bit of an extension here for the tag, I had a little bit of extra room to play with. So here is my foliage. I've got a button and a charm for up here. I'm just gonna tuck that in and then hold it in place while I glue the top on so that it will be positioned right where I want it. And I'll just clip off the excess now and top it with a vintage button so that I can hide those cut ends. Got a couple extra little vintagey buttons for the bottom here, and that is a nice balance. Okay, so what I'll do now is I will add the tags that I cut. So these are all coordinating with that smaller paper pad, the 6x6 patterns and solids, and then this is the die that coordinates with the Graphic 45 Staples tags, and this was a gift from a dear friend, and this has worked out pretty well. I only had the longer tags, but I was able to crop the bottom of that off so it still fits nicely into the pocket. And then I just want to mention here too that I coordinated the tags with the pages, and so when I cut the pattern paper, I didn't attach it all at once. I want to make sure that I have the correct tag in the right place, because what will be on this side will match this, but once you flip it, you'll want your tag to match this next set of pages. So this one is all set for the cover, and you want to make sure too that you are looking at the direction of the tag top, because the eyelet that looks nicer should be on top, I think, and that way it will show when you have the book closed. So I picked this green, and that matches the front of the book, and then on this side I picked an orange. So what I learned when I was cutting this is that you do want to be aware of the direction, because I cut two that were the same the first time, but when I flipped it over to go in the tag from the opposite side, then my pattern was upside down. So you want to cut one in this direction and then one in this direction if you're using directional paper, so that you won't have your pattern running upside down. So I just cut an extra one, and that's okay. I can use it for a different project. So that die cuts out the pattern paper perfectly with the eyelet on top. So I can add this to my page. And now remember, if you would like to have more room in your pockets for additional layering and stuff, you're going to have to make that pocket bigger, but this worked for me and I like the scale, so I'm just going to use this. So I've got orange on this side, I've got orange on this side, and then the B coordinates with this pretty botanical, so I flipped the scale again, lighter on the bottom and darker for the B, so that it doesn't look like too much pattern. And that one goes on this side. So my last set of pages has blue, and I've got blue here as well. See how easy that is to get that tag in because we offset the top layer. And then the back page matches that one as well. So remember, we can use the offcuts. This was a 6x6 paper pad, and this only cut the first like 4.5 inches off of it, so you're going to have a strip at the bottom that you can utilize if you want to accent your other pages. Okay, so here is my album. I put the rings on, and you can see how that's going to hold that together very nicely. I haven't made a ring bound album in a fair bit of time, but they are pretty easy to make, and it does the job. Before I learned how to make the hinge albums, I did also used to make them the paper bag kind, and you would get a pocket in there, and they would be so nice and heavy and bulky. And I think some people still make those, and I might even try to do one just to see how they are differing from the new kind. So here is the thing that I want to do to cover these rings and dress them up a little bit, is bring in some pretty trim. And this is from Really Reasonable Ribbon. I picked the colors to coordinate with the cover. So it's a green and that pretty peach color and a black check. And I think I want the black check to show on the front, so I'll add those and tie them. I'm just going to show you one because I think it will take a long time and that could be boring, and you know how I get to jibber jabbering. So I'll just show you one, and then I will go ahead and finish them off camera. So it's just a double knot here, and that will keep it in place. You can fill these rings in and really smush them in so you get a nice full amount of trim there, and that looks best. I think you want to also come back in with your scissors and cut that at an angle so your ribbon doesn't fray. Okay, I've got my trim all set, and I wound up putting on 2 of each color on the rings. You can fill them up more if you like, but remember that they have to function. You have to have enough space to open the book, so don't go too much on the trim on the side. Okay, so that is all for my Choose to Shine mini album created with the Nature Sketchbook collection from Graphic 45 and the deep dash into my stash for that calendar paper. So you can let me know in the comments if you are doing a deep dive into your stash while you're home with lots of extra time to create. I'd love to know what you guys are working on, so leave me a comment. If you enjoyed this video, let me know, and if you're not already, I would love for you to subscribe. As always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.